Welcome into episode 499. Great meal, great deal of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice.
No free advertising.
Come on. With every Bruins win over the Maple Leafs.
You know what's funny? Actually,
people.
you know what's funny? Actually, since you brought up the 99, I mean, this was like as good a place to start as any. I can't think of anything else that's happening. So, when I was in college, I had a friend from out of state, from a different area of the country that I guess has like a couple 99s. Like I don't know. I guess they've expanded out of New England a little, and his impression of the 99 was like, isn't that kind of like a really run down chain? And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, the 99 is an institution. Like you can go to any one of them. That's just where you go. Like that's where we just hang out on a Friday night.
Yeah, it's great. What's your popcorn rating of it? Because I love the nines, but I will say I feel like sometimes their popcorn can be a bit dry, or I know you like some butter on your popcorn.
That's true. Yeah, it's I would say it rates higher than Garden Press Box popcorn, which has been a little better recently, in fairness. But like, yeah, I mean, it's not movie theater popcorn.
Okay. All right. Well, I think last night's game over the Maple Leafs was popcorn at times. It was a very entertaining game and atmosphere for the Bruins, and so I don't even know if that made any sense, guys. But with that said, let's just Bridget, I saw your face, and you're like, yeah, that's not gonna stick.
Nope.
So
I was gonna let it slide.
But you know what I mean, though. Like people, when people, it's kind of hard to put it into a sentence. When people eat popcorn when they're entertained, that's all I meant by that. I'll take a laugh.
You're trying to make fetch happen.
Yeah, take it easy, Gretchen Wieners. Take it easy. All right. Opening shifts. Who's kicking us off here?
I will go first. So my opening shift is about David Pastrnak getting his 400th and 401st goal. So he is one behind Rick Middleton now. For he's in 6th. He'll be in 5th soon. Just needs 2 more goals to do that. So he scored a beautiful goal for 400. Early second period, he had just gotten out of the penalty box, and then all of a sudden he skates kind of like off the bench and goes right towards net, does a little deke on a breakaway, goes right around Hildeby, and he did not realize that his entire team was going to clear the bench either. And I don't know if you got the same impression I did, Scott, after talking to some of the guys in the post game. It did seem more spontaneous than I think people realize. I don't know how planned it was, because several of the guys were like, yeah, we just kind of did it.
It seems like it seems like it was maybe partially planned, but like the whole team maybe hadn't been looped in on it, because Hampus Lindholm said, like, yeah, we talked about it. We thought it was special enough to do it. And Morgan Geekie was like, no one talked to me about it.
Yeah, he was like, I was just happy I was on the ice for it, so I didn't need to have the memo. But
Morgan Geekie hit the Twitter waves again last night. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah,
he tweeted.
He did. Someone commented on just on the dynamic of clearing the bench for goal 400, and kind of like a
it was Kevin Majori from 98.5.
Yes,
who it was.
It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek criticism from Kevin. It wasn't anything serious, but Morgan Geekie kind of quote tweeted it and said, I think, don't quit your day job, Kevin. And Morgan Geekie is known to have some Brad Marchand type coming out of the woodworks, just tweets sometimes. And I think it was his first tweet in like a year and a half.
Yeah, the funny thing about him is he's like very calm, and you like from talking to him, you wouldn't think he'd be like chirping reporters, or not even a reporter in this case, but like a personality. And
but last year when he tweeted, that's when he started getting really hot, because he like replied to someone criticizing him and was like, wow, tell me how you really feel. And then he just started scoring like the best goal scorer in the world. So hopefully he doesn't like reverse it this time. Like hopefully tweeting doesn't cool him down, because he's been hot ever since.
Yeah, he's told us too. He's brought it up on his own. And I remember a time in particular, kind of early on with him being on the team, that he mentioned that he does pay attention to media's commenting about him. And he uses it as extra motivation. So I actually do have a thought on him and maybe him being helpful to Lori later on. But to get back to Pastrnak, he gets the benches clear for him, or the bench clears for him. The Toronto Maple Leafs didn't come and congratulate him, but his home bench clears for him. And he said after the game, you know, he didn't know it was going to happen, and he didn't realize how high he was on the list of all-time scorers for the Bruins. And then obviously his teammates had a bunch of really nice things to say about him. Hampus Lindholm said it's about time. Jokingly, like, hey, why did it take you so long, kind of thing. But yeah, everyone talked about how he was such a special player, humble, even though he's as good as he is, treats everybody the same and what have you. So whenever you have one of these kind of moments that you get a chance to shout out somebody for a big accomplishment, sometimes you get some extra stories and find out some, you know, you just hear some nice words from teammates. And so Pastrnak obviously deserved that. I thought he was going to get a hat trick, but he kind of tripped with the puck on his stick with an empty net in front of him. So he was like on his way down to score the third, and I was like, oh, he's got it. And then he fell, and then time expired. So I was like, well, I thought he was going to have like this hat trick and everything was going to be like, it was going to be this whole thing.
It was like a 4-minute shift for him to try to get the hat trick at the end.
Yeah, they kept icing it so he couldn't get off. And he had one, like he missed not by that much the empty net from his own zone. So that was one of the icings. Fortunately, they had a 2-goal lead. So I think you allow for a few more chances there, shots at the empty net, take the icing. But yeah, him and a couple other guys got stuck out there for a while.
It was primarily icings. You're right, but there were a couple of chances too.
Yeah.
I think like quick off a draw, quick whistle that they. And I one of the reasons I thought they may have taken him off was because Arvidsson and for that matter, and just whoever the D pair was, because it wasn't Zadorov, McAvoy. It may have been Lindholm and Peak, but I figured, maybe they would try to protect some of those guys from what usually could be an inevitable post-regulation scrum, especially with players like Max Domi out there trying to seek retribution for some stuff earlier in the game, and especially in like a 6-on-5 situation, you're outnumbered. So I thought maybe they would elect to throw Zadorov back out there and some of the bigger bodies, because to your point, Scott, it was a 2-goal lead with like 12 seconds left. So. But in any event, they kept him out there, and yeah, Bridget, he almost had the hat trick.
Yeah, I think he was out there for like 2.5 minutes. I'm pretty sure they pulled Hill to be right like at like 2:45, and then he popped right on the ice and then was out there the rest of the game for the most part. So yeah. And the one last thing I will say about the 400th goal and what Pastrnak talked about after the game was how much better it felt to do it at home, because his 60-goal season, the season that he had 100 points, he was on the road for those milestones, and he said it just didn't really feel like much at all. And then obviously when you take a second and the crowd, you get to hear the crowd cheer for you for the accomplishment. It makes it, and also makes it much better when you win. So obviously it comes at the same time that the Bruins hit their 7th win in a row, and they're in the playoff picture, like we mentioned, approaching Thanksgiving, and it just feels like there's a lot for them to be happy about and have confidence about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely want to get into Pastrnak a little bit more. I have some thoughts there, but my opening shift, kind of building off that, not only are they in the playoff picture, but they're second in the division in points percentage, tied for first in points, and that's because they now have 7 straight wins, including 2 in a row over Toronto. And they're kind of piling on the Leafs a bit at a moment when Toronto is really struggling and coming under a lot of criticism north of the border. And I think that makes it for Bruins fans and for the Bruins themselves, although, they're not going to really rub it in, but I think that makes this a little extra sweet to be sort of burying Toronto here. Because look, this is not how any of us expected this season to go for either of these two teams. Like, just in March, Toronto were the buyers. You were the sellers. You were the one who sent them Brandon Carlo, the veteran established presence, for futures, for a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a top prospect in Fraser Minton. And now it's already looking like the Bruins were the winners of that trade. And that's without even making that first-round pick yet. That's with only a small sample size of seeing what Fraser Minton can be. I know people up in Toronto are kind of freaking out about that. Fans are, unfortunately for Brandon Carlo, taking out some of their frustrations on him, or a lot of their frustrations on him, because he has not been great, and he had another turnover on a Bruins goal Tuesday night. Good forecheck by Alex Steeves, ends up getting it back, spins off John Tavares and beats Stolar's 5-hole. You have the former Leafs involved in this. I mentioned Steeves, like, he was on Toronto's AHL team the last bunch of years, scored a lot there, hardly ever got NHL opportunities. Now he's scoring one of the goals in a win over Toronto. Minton had the insurance goal Saturday up in Toronto in the third period. I thought Minton was really good again in this game. He was huge on a late penalty kill in the third period to help seal the win. So yeah, like, those guys are looking good. It's fascinating because, I don't, it might still be too early to kind of completely flip any predictions on both of these teams, but I feel like you have to start questioning those predictions and at least reconsidering them, because these weren't lucky wins for the Bruins. Like, they just straight up looked like the better team, and they outplayed them. They won more battles. They were more physical. They even kind of goaded Toronto into some stuff, thinking of Max Domi going after Zadorov and Swayman, and Zadorov could have responded and just pummeled him, but he didn't. He let up, and he let Domi take the only penalty at a crucial time in the game when Toronto's trying to come back. So, yeah, it's feels like it's all positive for Boston right now, and a lot of potentially very real concern up in Toronto, especially now you add in, an Auston Matthews injury. He left this game, second game in a row that someone from Toronto has been injured by Nikita Zadorov or going after Nikita Zadorov, because it wasn't quite clear exactly what part of that sequence between Zadorov and Matthews was when he actually got hurt, but Matthews didn't return to the game after that. So, yeah, I think it's 7 straight wins going to be great no matter what. But when the last 2 are over Toronto, I think definitely feels a little extra sweet.
And you said about expectations slipping for the two teams. Well, they flipped in the standings, because now Toronto is tied for second last in the Eastern Conference, which is where the Bruins were not that long ago. And now the Bruins are in the playoff picture. So they did physically flip in the standings. And obviously Leafs fans get up in arms about a lot of things, but I think at this point in time, like, yeah, this is a team that I'm sure has been really frustrating for them to watch. And then I got very mixed comments on the clip that I posted of Zadorov talking about the hit on Matthews yesterday. Some people were very obviously Toronto fans were like, yeah, that was dirty, blah, blah, blah. And then there's, they're going back and forth in the comments, and we can talk about
they being Toronto fans and then fans of every other city in the NHL, because the only people that are calling any of these hits any type of way other than clean has been people out of Toronto, and that includes the game before in Toronto, which was as clean as a body check as you can hit. Lay. So people talk about the follow through.
He's just big.
People talk about the follow through. It's like Lawton was already halfway to the ice when his elbow. But it's interesting because before I get to my opening shift, you guys bring up Toronto's troubles, and your knee jerk reaction is to think to yourself, Well, I mean, maybe the Mitch Marner departure hurts them a little bit more than maybe they hoped, right? But then again, you look at the standings, and offense hasn't been Toronto's issue. They're fourth in the league in goals for, right behind the Bruins. But you talk about Brandon Carlo and Toronto's defense and goaltending. But even the defense, I mean, it's all of it. And when they brought in Brandon Carlo, it's one thing to bring in Brandon Carlo as your third or fourth defenseman to go on a cup run. But it's another thing to staple him on what's your top pairing with Morgan Rielly, we talked about him for some reason. We've talked about him before the year. I don't remember. Maybe it was during our Atlantic predictions or something like that. But I talked about how he wasn't even in. I think he was like ranked in the 40s among NHL fantasy defensemen for NHL fantasy hockey, and he wasn't even listed, and rightfully so, in the NHL's top 20 defenseman listing. Like he you could argue is I guess if he's the second guy, right, in the top pair, like I think it's fair to call him a top pair defenseman, but he's not a high tier top pair defenseman at this stage in his career. He's capable, but I would say he's an average top pair defenseman. Is that fair to say right now? And then you put him with Carlo, and it's like, okay, so that's your top pairing, and then what's beyond that? So it's their team defensively it's always been weaker than the sum of their parts up front. But they've always made do. But right now the rubber's kind of meeting the road with them, and it's a vulnerable time. It's, as we saw last year, when you're not playing good hockey, when you're supposed to be in a market that demands a lot, this is not going to be an easy, now granted, they won 3 in a row before they lost twice to Boston. But just where they are in the standings are now 8-1, and Bridget, you mentioned it. I think second to last. Did you say in the conference?
Yeah, there's a few teams tied with 17 points. At the bottom of the conference, and then Buffalo's in last.
I mean, there's plenty of time for. I mean, again, if Toronto rattles off a couple of wins, you're right back in it. I mean, it's similar to what we talked about the Bruins recently, but they're in one right now. They got to fight their way out of that. Scott, do you have any comments before I move on to my opening shift?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that they're definitely missing Chris Tanev on defense. He is probably their best defender when he's in there. But even that, it's like he's 35. He's not very mobile. He's had a lot of injury troubles throughout his career, so you shouldn't be counting on him to be your number one defenseman either. You're right. Like, they don't have a true number one defenseman, and arguably they don't even really have 2 first pairing guys. So they're, it's like they're trying to do it by committee. But I saw a tweet over the weekend that it seemed like a lot of Leafs fans agreed with, and it was someone I forget who it was. I apologize if anyone in Toronto is listening, but said, like, the Leafs right now don't have a single defenseman you trust with the puck on their stick. Like, and you would think Morgan Rielly would be that guy, but like, he's just so sloppy at times, and commits so many careless turnovers that it's like, yeah, I kind of get that. And again, I think that's one of the things that Carlo's getting criticized for is like, oh, he's not contributing in transition, and like, he's not great on the breakout and all that. And it's like, well, yeah, like, if that's what you acquired him for, that's not really what you should have been expecting. Yeah, especially with Tanev out, like, they are probably asking too much of him right now.
Yeah, which it's interesting because, again, I feel like they're putting Carlo in a situation where that he can't thrive in, and they're kind of setting him up for failure. And again, maybe in a perfect world he's on their second pair, but again, he was with Rielly last year, even when Tanev was healthy. So again, you're right. They're trying to do this like by committee defense, similar to what you see with kind of the Bruins offensively heading into the year outside of Pastrnak, but and apparently Morgan Geekie now, who is just one of the best goal scorers in hockey over the last calendar year as well. I mean, I think he's been slept on locally and nationally. But yeah, I mean, Brandon Carlo, it's like he's been in the division, and for Leafs fans, like, yeah, I get it. When you're playing opponents, you're not focusing on the other team's, third or fourth defenseman on every shift. But Brandon Carlo not being a breakout savant is not any mystery. Like, we all know this. We all knew this. His strengths are, just strictly just defense. And even then, he struggled with that last year, which is why Bruins fans were kind of like, all right, yeah, whatever you can get for him. First round and a top prospect, or all right. But anyway, that's our lead
I think that word is savant that you were looking for.
Savants.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But by the way, one last thing.
What did I say? Savant?
Yes.
I like Savant better. Can we stick with Savant?
Another classic case of not having any idea how a word is supposed to be pronounced.
One last thing on that trade, and then Brian can go into his opening shift
he's not allowed.
Still have one. But so I have seen a couple people kind of dreaming of like, oh, what if the Leafs pick gets you Gavin McKenna? I will just note it's top 5 protected. So if the Leafs happen to be bad enough or like won the lottery, unfortunately, you're not going to get that pick if it's a top 5. It moves to, I think it has to move to 2028 because the Leafs also traded their 2027 first. So just a little footnote there.
Yeah.
That would be quite an interesting, because I guess that's how they got Tyler Seguin. So similar way, drafted him second because it was the Leafs pick in the Kessel trade.
Yeah, as much as I love piling up on Toronto, I don't envision that for them. But you never know. If Auston Matthews is out for any extended amount of time, maybe it's tougher for them. But even then, bottom 5 is tough.
Best case scenario is they finish like 6th or 7th from last, and they get the pick, and it's a top 10 pick, but it's not in the 5, because then that really delays your return on the trade. But if they get anywhere between 6th and 10th from the bottom, like, that's a good pick that you're adding.
All right. Time for my opening shift of, let's call it the second period at this point in the game.
I was gonna say you got benched for the whole first period.
All right, so just building off of Scott's opening shift, which, to go back 10 minutes, was just about how well the Bruins have played this year. You talked about their win streak, talked about their metrics, and their place in the standings. And this is kind of getting to the territory where this is more than like a flash in the pan, right? When you account for their 3-game win streak to open the year, which you put less weight in because crazy shit happens in the first week of the NHL season. But then you have their 6-game losing streak, which in, I would say, 4 of the 6, they were right there and could have or should have at least taken a point out of it. So even in those 6 games, for maybe at least 60% of that stretch, they were still playing very competitive, borderline, good enough hockey to get a point or points. Then you have the stinker in Ottawa after the win against Colorado. That's really been the only game this year where it's been like, what the was that? From a competitiveness standpoint. Well, now you've rattled off 7 straight wins, and it's not like you said it, Scott. They haven't been flukes. So the question that I've been asking myself is, first of all, where the fuck did this come from? Because how is this team on paper the 3rd highest scoring team in the NHL in goals for? Now, goals per game, I think you said it was 6th, Scott?
Yeah.
But even still, and are we in mid-February? No, we're still not even 20 games into the year. But that's still a relatively, good sample size. And I guess the question I ask myself is this Bruins team for real in the sense of their ability to make the playoffs? I'm not talking about them being a contender, but is this a flash in the pan where we'll look back at the end of the year, but remember when the Bruins looked like world beaters for a few weeks, but then they turned back into a pumpkin? And I'm starting to think that no, like they could be, like they should be a team that is there, because I feel like the way that they play is sustainable now that it's clicked. I mentioned a few episodes ago that there's a difference between a team who knows what they should be and knows who they are, and how the Bruins are playing with the confidence of a team who knows who they are. And they're just playing a sound game. They're not playing a sexy game. They're playing hard. They're playing simple. They're playing effective. And on a night-to-night basis in the NHL, that's that's good. That's good enough to continue to get you wins. I don't see David Pastrnak slowing down over the course of the season. Yeah, he'll have some off games here and there, but he's going to be a consistent scorer. Morgan Geekie's proven over the last calendar year that he's right now one of the better goal scorers in the league. So for you all listening, and for you and for you two, Bridget and Scott, where is your mindset right now? Do you feel like this is who the Bruins truly just could be this year? Just a smart, fundamental team that's why not make the playoffs?
I think how they've started winning is becoming really encouraging, because I'd say maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, if you had asked me, does this look sustainable? My answer probably would have been no, because they're still getting outshot and outchanced a lot. And even on the season as a whole right now, if you look at things like scoring chances for and against, high danger chances, expected goals, all that, they're still pretty low, like bottom third of the league. But recently, it has really started to turn in the right direction. In 4 of their last 5 games, they're over 50% expected goals. They're on the right side of high danger chances, scoring chance advantage. They just dominated Toronto 5-on-5 in 2 back-to-back games. And Toronto has not been a great 5-on-5 team, so that, you took advantage of that. But the Bruins, I don't think were a great 5-on-5 team until quite recently. So, in these 2 games, outscored them 6-2 at 5-on-5. And one of those 2 for Toronto was 3 seconds after a power play ended. So for all intents and purposes, that was basically a power play goal. So you're starting to see better 5-on-5 play here over the last week and a half. You see good special teams. They're now 8th on the power play, up to 25% in the season. They went 3 for 6 Tuesday. Penalty kill slipped Saturday in Toronto, is still 11th in the NHL, has been good the vast majority of the season. So yeah, you add it together, goaltending's been much better during this winning streak, both Swayman and Korpisalo. Thought Swayman might have maybe wanted 1 or 2 back Tuesday night. So
yeah, Ekman Larsson's point shot for sure.
That definitely. Weird. But you're probably going to Korpisalo Thursday in Ottawa anyways. I think that would have been the plan even before that. So that's coming together. So yeah, suddenly you're seeing even the stuff that early in the year you might have thought, well, that doesn't really seem sustainable, or that's still concerning, has gotten better. So if that continues and they continue to play a better brand of 5-on-5 hockey, and they have some possession and they're creating high danger chances and they're not giving as many up, then yes, it starts to become more sustainable and more believable that, not that they're going to keep reeling off 7-game winning streaks, but that they can be a winning team and stay in the playoff picture.
Yeah, and I want to read Pasternak's quote about this from last night. He said, I think the way we played 5-on-5 was awesome. I thought we dominated. We have to keep going. We know the recipe now. So basically, all right, we've seen that we're able to do these good things detail-wise, 5-on-5. We've gotten kind of the pieces, we've put them together, and we now think we can just continue to keep doing that on a nightly basis. And I guess, Brian, the way I look at the question is this team that we've seen during the win streak going to be who they are the rest of the season? If the answer is yes, then that's a solidly in the playoffs team, right? That is not a questionably in the playoffs team. It's not even a wild card team. Probably it's probably more of a second or third in the division. It could be that high of a finish. And the confidence level is extremely high. I think you have to be encouraged by when we asked the key questions of what's going to determine the season early in the year. We talked about the health of their defense. Getting Lindholm back has been big. I mean, not to bury the lead on him, but he scored his first goal of the season, his first goal in over a year. So he's been back. He's been good. That allows you to put the McAvoy-Zadorov pair together that I think is probably going better than people would have even thought. And so your defense is healthy, and you have these top two pairs that have been really good. And we've talked about the rotation on the third pair with Lohrei out, now in. But check that, right? That one question. So as of right now, check. Could change at any minute because health is not guaranteed. But is Swayman to have a bounce back year? Well, I don't think we can fully check that off yet, but I think he's off to a good start for that. And then I guess the third was depth scoring. Can you get scoring besides Pastrnak? And check to that. I mean, I've thought that Geeky has continued on what was a good season last year. I think Zacha has looked good. There's been scoring from your younger guys, who's Nadinov and Mitten, and you're finding it more so than I think it looked like your roster had the capability to on paper coming into the season.
Yeah, and even throughout this win streak, it's been a 7-game win streak. But from where I sit, and I'm curious if you guys have any differing opinion, but I feel like even when the win streak started, they were still kind of playing, hockey that was risky hockey, Riverboat Gambler hockey with the wins over the Islanders. They go down 2-0, and then they finish that game strong, and then they have the win over the Sabres. That was back and forth. You have a lead you give up. That Carolina game, from that Carolina game on, something switched in them, right? And I feel like they've been playing a specific brand of just sound, physical, opportunistic, responsible hockey, right? Something has changed from that Carolina game on specifically. And yeah, like, the guys deserve credit up and down the lineup. I mean, Lindholm's return to the lineup has been massive. We all know that, and he's been great.
Hey, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't the Bruins only have one loss since he's if the record while Lindholm is in the lineup is extremely in the plus, they only have one loss, and what do they have, 9 wins or something like that? It's gonna be.
I think they're now 9-1 with Hampus Lindholm in the lineup.
So say no more, right? And then Charlie McAvoy, since Lindholm's come back, has been the Charlie McAvoy we all outside. Mistakes are still going to happen. We can talk about that first goal that the Bruins gave up the other night. But for the most part, Charlie McAvoy has been much more like the Charlie McAvoy we've all seen him be before when he's at the top of his game. 14 points, I think, in 17 games now. And Nikita Zadorov has been out fucking standing, truly, for what he's supposed to bring. This is the Bruin that Boston thought they were bringing in last year. And again, we've talked about it. Last year, he was a hell of a lot better start to finish than people really gave him credit for. And when I say start to finish, I just mean in totality, because obviously to start the year, he had a bunch of penalty issues and troubles acclimating. But then as the year went along, Lindholm and McAvoy go out, and you see what happened to the Bruins lineup. But so to your point, Bridget, about health and how important that is going forward. But Lindholm, Zadorov, I thought he played pretty sound for the most part on that team last year with what they had to work with. And then up front, you have guys like guys that aren't jumping off the page in terms of production on the season, but Tanner Jeannot is just playing a sound game. Mark Kastelik, he is playing fantastic hockey. And listen, if you were to ask me, is Mark Kastelik, is Tanner Jeannot, those guys ideally fourth line players? I would say sure, but I don't know. Mark Kastelik can prove to be a rugged guy on a third line in the NHL. Why not? I mean, he's playing great hockey, and you're just seeing everybody's pulling on the rope right now. The guys who are supposed to lead offensively are leading. The guys who are supposed to lead defensively are leading. And then all of the support characters they're just playing responsible hockey. It shouldn't be overlooked that they're playing without, for what it's worth, Casey Middlestad and Elias Lindholm still.
Yeah, I mean, like you talk about like a team identity, and it's like that bottom six is contributing to that in a big way. And like I said, like not just running around throwing hits, but playing physical hockey that's effective. You know, getting in on the forecheck, forcing turnovers, pinning teams in, being responsible defensively. And, you know, we all thought like, well, the problem with, you know, loading up on all these grinder type players in the bottom six is you don't have enough offense. Like you need a third line that has some offensive upside. You don't trust your second line. You know, is the power play really going to be that much better? And it's like, well, your top line guys are scoring. Pastrnak and Geeky have more or less picked up where they left off last year. Your second line has been good. They're scoring pretty consistently. Some guys in that bottom six are chipping in. Like it's not like they're just zeros across the board every single night. Your power play has been a lot better. And it's like, well, you can't really say that this team doesn't have enough offense. Like you said, like 6th in goals per game. So the formula in terms of generating offense is working right now. You know, like, sure, I get why people want to see, you know, different kids called up from Providence, but like, it's hard to argue with what they're doing right now because it is working. Let's see like how long that lasts. But right now it's a good formula. And like, you call up Alex Steves and put him in the second line. We talked last podcast. Oh, you know, that seemed, Bridget and I were talking like, it seems like a little odd. Like we didn't know if that was really the ideal choice, but he looked good Saturday. Well, he looked even better Tuesday. Like he scores that goal. He's physical. I think he led the team in hits again. Now his hits aren't as impactful as a Nikita Zadorov, who, you know, hits to do some damage. But Steve's physicality is effective in terms of putting pressure on the forecheck. Again, like he ends up with the goal, but it was his pressure on Carlo in the first place that forced the turnover. So you can't even like argue with that right now. It's like, I don't know. Alex Steves is playing good hockey, you know, like it's a lot of guys are right now for this team.
I commented on the ninth floor to Scott at one point. He made a move towards the goal, and I said that doesn't look like an AHL guy to me. He looked good. Brian, you missed that part. We talked about like, oh, could they have called up Patro or Blumel or Lysell or whatever? But the results have proven that Steves was the right guy, I think, to call up. But you said, Scott, like, how can you argue with them not really changing the lineup too much? I mean, Steves gets called up out of necessity, right? This wasn't a call up to like put someone out of the lineup. And when Middlestat goes down, Steves comes in and takes his spot. But it's you look at this win streak and you're like, oh yeah, they needed those identity guys, and they good thing they didn't switch the lineup up. But that was not at all what the conversation we were having towards the tail end of the losing streak, where it seemed obvious that something needed to change, right? We're sitting there like, this can't be what the solution is. And Sturm sat there and kind of chuckled and was like, this is what we got, and this is what we have to deal with, and we have to get through it. And he made a comment to a question I asked him yesterday after the game, about how, first of all, what he's seen them do differently in this 7-game win streak is they started to grasp the systems, but then they also started to add on the details. And he said a lot of times that part takes a long time, and that he's actually really encouraged that he thinks it happens sooner than it does on a lot of teams with a new coach. So that's one part of it. And he said that he thinks the other part is he thinks the losing streak really helped them kind of get a kick in the ass and head in the right direction, because they obviously have a lot of pride and they don't want that to be what they're being talked about for. And so the quote from him, he said, that losing streak was probably the best for us. what could have happened, because that kind of brought us together. We had to go back to the drawing board a little bit and really start from scratch again. And I think that's exactly what we needed.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bridget. I think if you could face adversity at any point in the year, but in this case early on, and learn from it, overcome it, then yeah, it can you can absolutely learn from it. It's dangerous territory when you face adversity and you can't and you let it beat you all year, like you saw with the Bruins last year. But yes, now that they've gotten on the other side of this, 1,000%, they're very much battle tested. So for this current season,
Yeah, and I think it reminds me of a quote, or it reminds me of a comment that Nick Foligno made to us a few seasons ago in the early parts of the season. It must have been the season before the historic season, because I believe they had a little bit of a difficult start to that year, and he said, really happy that we're getting this out of the way now. Like, that's the mentality. It's like, you got to go through this at least once, or maybe it was even during that good season and they hit a rough patch. I don't know. But I know for sure he said, you don't want to cruise to the playoffs and not really hit any adversity, because the adversity kind of is where you kind of come together and learn and get the kick in the ass that you need. So maybe it was a good thing they got it out of the way when they did. Maybe it's the only extended losing streak they have of the season, and we're not talking about the 6-game losing streak anymore come January, February, when they've, maybe they have 2 or 3 in a row, but it doesn't stack up on them like that.
Yeah, and we kind of saw what happened the following season when you face a lack of diversity, because when it slapped the Bruins in the face in the first round against Florida, it was one of the reasons that it was kind of tough to overcome, in addition to some other reasons, injuries, lack of chemistry with deadline additions and guys coming off injured reserve and whatnot. But that Florida team was very battle tested. They faced a lot of adversity that year. But yes, that it's great that they've overcome it. As far as playing the kids, calling kids up, listen, I understand it. We understand it. But again, Marat Husnudinov right now has been playing with David Pastrnak for 5 or 6 games at this point, obviously in part due to injury, but at the same time, he was also playing with them before Lindholm got hurt. And he's 23. So he's younger than Blumel. He's younger than Merkulov. He's within 12 months of Fabian Lysell, who's 22. And then Fraser Minton. Talk about another player who's just been outstanding. And you mentioned him earlier in the episode, Scott, regarding the Carlo trade. But he's the same age as Patra. So, and he's playing valuable minutes in a lot of situations. So you do have some young forwards that are contributing and playing big minutes for this Bruins team right now. It's not like it's all veterans, which was the fear from the outside looking in throughout much of the summer and entering the season with who they brought in and kids not making the team out of camp. But then when you see Husnudinov emerge with opportunity, you see Minton emerge. It's like, okay, you don't need 8 young guys in the lineup. You could have a couple, and then you have some guys in their prime and some older guys. But even a guy like Mark Kastelik, and we mentioned him a few minutes ago. But how old is he? He's probably like 25, 26. Like, I don't think he's not that old. Tanner Jeannot is probably in his mid-20s. Like, these guys aren't like 37-year-old veterans that the Bruins just brought in. It's not like they brought in a bunch of Victor Arvidssons, who's in his early 30s.
Yeah, Jeannot's a little old. Jeannot's 28.
Okay, but still in his prime.
Yeah, I will say don't want to alarm the Kuzi guy, the Kuzi gang, but he did go for an X-ray or some sort of testing after the game.
He just texted this in the chat. I was texting it to Brian because Brian doesn't know this.
Yeah, so I did see him walking through the locker room after. Looked like maybe like a little bit of a limp, but it wasn't like blatantly obvious, and he didn't have a boot or anything. So just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some soreness in probably his it seemed like his feet, but he was limping a little bit, but he also was walking on his own. It wasn't like they like had him off of his feet, or the fact that he was walking around at all is probably pretty encouraging. I don't think if you go for an X-ray and then they're like, oh, it's broken, then they let you walk out of there. So hopefully it's fine. And he took a beating too. Like there was a few times that he got lined up, and was it Domi that tried to line him up at one point? Somebody got him. And then he retaliated and he ended up in the box and whatever. But he's getting more attention, obviously. When you're playing on the first line and you're starting to play better, you're going to draw more physical attention. And so he did.
Domi's
fine, but
Domi's never licked his lips more than when a guy has his gloves still on, or if he's smaller than him and not a tough guy. I mean, he talk about a guy who picks and chooses moments where he tries to, be tough. And I'm not saying he's not a tough individual. He has fought a lot. He does have some screws loose, but if you really want to be tough, like square up with somebody that knows how to fight.
Well, I will say, like, he dropped his gloves on Zadorov.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying.
I thought Zadorov was just gonna like take the invitation and pound him into the ice, but
no,
he actually backed off in that case and just let Domi take the only penalty. But
he knew he wasn't fighting him there. I'm telling you guys, that was a bit of a showmanship type situation. He saw the ref was there. He saw his gloves were off and then he on, and then he was trying to not fight him. And come on. I mean, that wasn't a square off, drop the gloves situation with Zadorov he got himself into.
It wasn't, because we'll add some context that will let you know that he knew Zadorov probably wasn't going to fight him. They used to be teammates in the OHL, right? And they're friends. And so he's like, I'm not going to fight my friend. Like after the game, he said this. He's like, I'm not going to fight my friend. Like there's a lot of reasons, and being baited into a penalty is
wouldn't be the first time friends fought, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Zadorov's being a little sly there. I think Zadorov would fight a friend if it came to that.
But I think he genuinely meant it. Like,
I think he genuinely likes Max Domi. Yes, they're friends. Ty Domi, his dad, was also good to Zadorov. Zadorov said that. That said, if the situation really called for it, I don't think Zadorov would hesitate to throw some punches.
Yeah. Well, either way, he decides not to and draws the penalty. And I think if you were a fan watching on, you probably are like, why? Like it probably answers the question a little bit of like, why didn't Zadorov just go for it? Like he was agitating him. I mean, I thought Swayman might go for it. He threw a punch in there right before. So, right. That was the same. I think that was right around the same time.
Yeah. And I think it was kind of like Swayman throwing the jab, where Zadorov was like, all right, I'll wrap this guy up. And someone tweeted, it looks like a refrigerator falling. Like Zadorov just kind of like leaned on Domi and fell on.
That's the thing, is like he didn't even have to throw a punch. He still ended up on top. Like he probably still kind of hurt him, not even purposefully, but like Domi pulled him backwards right on top of him. Like you just that's not how you win one of these. But yeah.
Real quickly, I also wanted to mention the Bruins' third pair last night, because I was very interested to see how they did. Lohrei and Jokiharju. Thought Lohrei, and you guys probably spent a lot of time on this last episode, but great bounce back game from him after sitting for, was it 5 games in a row or 6?
5.
So I just thought that was as sound of a defensive game as I feel like I've seen him play in a while, and that's great news. I want that to be the norm going forward. Though in the same breath, I will also say, and this is nothing to do with Lohrei specifically, but I still like the dynamic that Jonathan Aspero brought in his brief time. So, between Jokiharju, Aspero, and Lohrei, like maybe it's just maybe it's a matchup thing, an opponent thing, who's playing just a smidge better right now, or good enough to not be out of the lineup between those three, because I still see a pairing of Lohrei and Jokiharju, and I'm more so talking about Jokiharju here, struggling against a strong physical forechecking team that knows what they're doing. I mean, Toronto is, for all their offensive strengths, like they're not the most, although they do add guys here and there, like a Dakota Joshua, Nicholas Waugh, but they're not the heaviest forward-checking team, and I think that was a good matchup for Lohrei and Jokiharju as a pairing. I could see, and I know that they're the same hand in this. I can see the world where Lohrei and Aspro complement each other well, right? Like they could be a yin and a yang situation where Aspro is kind of like the hard-nosed, simplistic, physical defensive defenseman who can move, and then Lohrai's who we know can be offensively, but also if he can be consistent defensively. I can see that pairing being effective in a third pairing role against specific matchups and opponents. Because like if the Bruins were to play Carolina or Florida when they're going, or any of these higher end teams that know how to forecheck well, I don't love Jokiharju and Lohrei together. Maybe that's a moment where you put Asper with one of them.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the plan these next couple games now going on the road, because Lohrei Jokiharju was very sheltered Tuesday night. Basically, all of their shifts came against Toronto's bottom six. They only had one defensive zone start. Jokiharju ends up playing just 11:06. Neither one of them played the final 5 minutes of the game, with the Bruins protecting a lead. So you can't shelter a pairing as much on the road because you don't have last change. So you're gonna have to face some top six guys. So I am interested to see if Sturm tries to stick with that or gets Aspro back in and maybe goes with, at least someone on that pairing who's got a little more defensively stout. Because you can do that at home. You can go with Lohrei and Jokiharju and just keep them sheltered and keep them in favorable matchups, but it's harder to do that on the road. So I'll be interested to see what the lineup looks like in Ottawa Thursday night.
Yeah. And because I had mentioned this earlier, with Geeky, talking about Geeky, but really it's more about Mason Lohrei, or I guess equally, but Lohrei being scratched 5 games in a row, obviously that could be something that's not great for your confidence. And so he was telling reporters that Morgan Geeky is someone who helped him during that time. And if you recall, Morgan Geeky himself was scratched a bit last season at the beginning of the season. And obviously Bruins fans probably didn't follow him before that, but he was a fourth line guy in and out of the lineup before getting to the Bruins. So he's dealt with that in his career. So he was somebody that was being helpful to Lohrei, talking him through it and how to keep the right mindset and come back and respond. And every time it's happened to Geeky, he has, right? So he's probably a good person to be a sounding board in that situation. And then Geeky himself, when just a few games ago, when Marchand came back for his return to TD Garden, Geeky said Marchand was the guy that helped him get through that. So there's kind of been like this pay it forward of guys supporting the teammates that are not in the lineup for being scratched.
Yeah, and that first game back for Laura, that's a difficult one, right? And I feel like I mentioned this maybe a week ago or so, but when somebody gets back into the lineup that first time, there's that element of knowing that all eyes are on you. More importantly, all eyes from the coaching staff, they're on you. And with that first touch of the puck, like you're probably, you don't want to go back into the lineup and then overthink so that you're not making mistakes with the intention of not making mistakes, but then you're playing at a slower pace, you're making decisions at a slower pace, and that's ironically when mistakes happen. So I think that was a difficult spot for him to be in that first game back, which came because Charlie McAvoy couldn't play for family reasons. So yeah, that was good on him. I wanted to ask you guys a question because this is going to be a narrative, I think, throughout the season. And a lot of people, most Bruins fans and analysts, did not expect this Bruins team. And granted, we are still only a month in. We're not even 20 games in. The Bruins have a hell of a lot more work to do to make the playoffs. But nobody expected them to be where they are in the standings right now, especially amidst their 6-game regulation losing streak to start the year. Now that they've turned the corner, it's easy to ride the highs, right? Just like it's easy to get all mopey during the lows. But there's a lot of Bruins fans I see out there online that are adversarial with each other, because you have many fans that are saying, hey, this is what the goal was this year. It was to try to reestablish their structure, their identity, and get the train back on the tracks. And you have Hagen's coming and other young prospects in the future. And we have some draft picks stockpiled. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. This is what we wanted to see. Then you have other Bruins fans that are saying, no, it's really not. This is too short-sighted. Like you don't want this team to make the playoffs. You want them to sell high on Arvidsson and Middlestad and Zacha, and you want to add high-end prospects to complement McAvoy and Pastrnak's prime, even if it's in a year. It's whatever. Like you guys know the argument, and how you keep guys like Middlestad and Arvidsson and Zacha, or two of them, whatever, and to try to make the playoffs this year and get that positive energy and momentum into future years, even if you don't win a cup, obviously. And it's like, okay, you do that. Well, now you're being short-sighted. Now you lost an opportunity to get some more. You guys get the narrative. So where do you guys fall on that? I feel like I know where you fall, but what do you make of both arguments? Because I do understand both sides from a logistical standpoint. I do.
I come down on enjoy the ride for the time being. I am a firm believer that you go into a season wanting to be competitive, and then you see how the season goes. And if you're not good enough and your roster just has too many holes and you lose too many games, then you do what you did last year. You sell before the deadline, you plummet in the standings late, and you accrue assets. I have always hated, will always hate the idea of going into a season with the mindset being, well, I hope we lose as much as possible. I get why maybe some fans think that way, but I just think that it's such a loser mindset. I think it's disastrous to an organization. It sends the wrong message up and down the board to everyone, to veterans, to guys in their prime, to young players, to your coaching staff, to your AHL coaching staff, to your development team, to everyone. When there is any hint of we actually want to lose, I think you do more damage than just in the standings. So you should want to be competitive for as long as possible. And if it turns out come February, March, you're not good enough, you make tough decisions then and you start looking to the future. So that's my take on it. That's kind of how I've always felt. I get the argument for look at this team where the rebuild actually worked, Colorado or Tampa back in the day. Florida had a lot of high picks, but Florida really added to their roster a lot of other ways. But yes, had a couple key high picks in Barkov and Ekblad in particular. What I would note is that you have already accrued quite a few assets. Yep. Could you use more if this year doesn't go well? Of course. But you already drafted a James Hagens. You acquired a Fraser Minton. You acquired a Will Zellers, who looks like a pretty good prospect. Mm-hmm. You have multiple
first-round picks.
You have multiple drafts coming up where you have multiple first-round picks. Mm-hmm. You have some assets. And yes, if you stink this year, you can add even more. But guess what? If you're good and you're competitive and you're already a playoff team, you don't need 6, 7, 8 young assets and draft picks to hit. Now you're looking at, can we bring in 2, 3, 4 young players who can now really add to this? And you might already be on the path to adding 2, 3, 4 impact younger players.
These guys are also extremely competitive. You think that anybody is going to buy into the individual players are going to be like, yeah, let's just get rid of this season. Like, no one wants to lose a season in their career. Like, that's precious time that you don't know how long you have in the NHL. So imagine trying to get someone like Nikita Zadorov to just like throw a season. Like, there's no way that these guys.
Well, that's more. It's more so people talking about it's not. This isn't a player coach thing. It's
No,
people
but
being
like
like
they
the
get
GM
mad
needs to
when
make moves that make them worse on paper.
but fans get mad when that does happen, right? Say the team's not good, but they're also not bad enough to get a really high pick. Like, fans get upset that it's not like people aren't tanking. And whether, like, obviously the more the more natural tank would be like you do it because you just aren't good, but it's really not possible to get people to just be in on the tank because they're not going to be. They want to win.
No, well, you get the team in on the tank by trading guys away. Like the people who truly want to bottom out and want this like long, which I just don't get, but like want this long rebuild where you have multiple years with a shot at the number 1 pick or something. That means trading David Pastrnak. Like, let's
Right.
be very clear. Like, that's what you have to do to be that bad for that long.
Yep.
So this guy who just scored his 400th career goal, who if he stays here is going to blow your franchise goal record out of the water, it means trading that guy away.
Yeah.
Like, let's, and then by the way, then you're getting your top 5 picks in 6 years. Guess what? You're hoping one of them turns into David Pastrnak. Like, this is where like those people just lose me. I'm like, if you end up in that kind of long rebuild, yes, now you need to hit on your picks and it might work out, but no one like, I just hate the idea of planning for that.
Yeah.
If it happens and like things just go sideways enough that you have to do that, okay, then let's get those high picks and hit on them. But trying to like actually be like, oh yeah, the front office and team ownership should just plan on sucking for 7 years is, for anyone to want that is so bizarre to me. Like, count me out. Like, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
Nah, I'm with you guys. Bridget, did you have a final thought on that?
I was just gonna say, remember a few episodes ago when I was telling you that the guys behind me were you had some interesting takes and they were like, pasta's washed. It's like, is he really washed? Like, those are the kind of guys that would want him to get traded and want the tank. I feel like that's the kind of fan that's like, for some reason, has given up on the current assets. Like, they don't like Pastrnak and McAvoy and Swayman or whatever, but it just was so obvious. I couldn't stop thinking about him yesterday when Pastrnak scores his 400th and then his 401st, and I'm like, he looks so washed, right?
And also, by the way, like, could have had 4 assists in that game. You had 1, but like set up several teammates for could have been like almost empty net tap-ins that they whiffed on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with you guys. I think that orchestrating your own demise to try to get better for the future, I think it's not. It's not. I don't agree with it either. I think you have to just naturally see where you are around the trade deadline time. Have self-awareness of where your organization is. So this Bruins team, if they're in a playoff spot at the trade deadline time, we've talked about this. We're not buying rentals. Like I'm not telling this team to buy into rid of future capital for this team at all. If they're a playoff team at the deadline, and there's a long-term acquisition to be had that makes sense, sure. But besides that, this team is either staying pat or they're doing a soft sell, whatever. It just depends on what's required. But I absolutely think that it's also about trajectory. Where is the organization, and what would a playoff run or playoff appearance mean to them? And like when I look at the Centennial season, I kind of went into that playoff run, and even that season, I just kind of felt like things were just being delayed and without having a true number 1, number 2 center. And I just felt like it was kind of a fool's errand, because even though that Bruins team in 23-24 was like a top 10 team in the standings, they didn't have a true number 1 and number 2 center. You had Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha doing an admirable job and producing well enough to get you through that year, but like you weren't winning a Stanley Cup with that group. And I just felt like, okay, eventually here you're bashing your head against the wall, right? Like this team, we know this team has to take steps back at some point to take steps forward. But now they've taken those steps back, and it happened organically because they tried to prolong it last year, but you have injuries and underperformances, and you had to do what you had to do last year. But now they have replenished some stock picks, some draft picks, and you did draft James Hagan. So, and you do have younger players in this lineup like Kuzmadinov and Minton and others, and so making the playoffs for this group would be new for this group together, and I do think it would benefit them going forward. It kind of makes me think of a prompt about the last time the Bruins were kind of in this situation organizationally, and I talked about this over the summer, which is heading into the 07-08 season, right? You had back-to-back years of finishing 13th in the East. You were a bottom 10 team in the league. You were atrocious. That 07-08 team, you bring in Claude Julien. You bring in, a cast of characters who weren't supposed to win a Stanley Cup. They were just supposed to get the train back on the rails. And then you lose Patrice Bergeron for the whole season after, I think, 6 or 7 games. And so now you're talking about a team that's been one of the last place teams in the NHL for the last couple of years. And their top young forward just went down for the season. You have every reason for that season to go off the rails and to, go into tank territory. And by the way, the top draft pick that ensuing spring or summer was Steven Stamkos. So it's interesting to think about what would have happened had the Bruins saw the Bergeron injury and said, you know what, fuck this. Like, we just need to kind of tank for Stamkos. And Steven Stamkos is a Hall of Fame player, and he's won multiple Stanley Cups. But I ask you guys this. The Bruins obviously made the playoffs that year, and it started as an 8 seed, and they had that memorable series against Montreal, and it kickstarted a momentum that eventually wound up in some heartbreak, and then a Stanley Cup. And had they been a lottery team that year and drafted Steven Stamkos, maybe they would have won a cup eventually, but maybe they don't win the cup in 11, like, because the butterfly effect doesn't take place. And so I don't know. It's impossible to predict. You just have to kind of be self-aware of your trajectory and just see where you are, and don't make any rash decisions, or you just see what makes sense in the moment, I think.
Right. Like you would have missed on a whole year of culture building. And if that disappears for a year, there's no guarantee that like you just bring that group back fall 2008 and are like, all right, now we're going to get back to, building a winning culture. It's like, well, if you just completely sucked the year before, like, guys are gone and you're turning things over, and maybe you never get that culture. This, again, for every successful quote fingers rebuild where a team does hit on high picks and 7, 8, 10 years later wins a cup, there's also examples of teams that just get stuck in it forever and like never. Obviously Buffalo is like the ultimate example of this, now going on 15 years, but Montreal is like just pulling out. Maybe we'll see if this proves to be sustainable for them. Ottawa thought they were pulling out, and now this season sort of feels like it's maybe a little in limbo for them. Like there's no guarantee. There's also, Chicago, like, are they finally going to start to pull out? It's been just about a decade for them now. It's not just because you get some high picks doesn't guarantee a Stanley Cup at the end of the line. So,
and also, like, do you end up with Chara? Like,
Well, they would have already had him at that point.
Was that?
Yeah, they already had him.
It would have looked
okay,
like,
right, you're right. What am I saying?
It would have been a situation where, like, if like right now people are saying like, okay, trade Middlestat, trade Arvidsson, trade Zacha. The 07-08 version of that would have been the Bruins being around the playoff picture at the trade deadline, which they were, because they made the playoffs, obviously, and it would be like them at that time trading, probably, like, ironically, like Marco Sturm, and maybe like a Glenn Murray, and like a Peter Shape, like whatever. Like they would have done a soft sell of players that helped them get to that point that year. Like they would have held on to Savard, they would have held on to Bergeron, Krejci, obviously, Lucic, and then like this current team's versions of that is like obviously you have James Hagen's not on the team right now, but he could be in the spring, right? And there are some younger players. We've talked about them on this episode already. So it like Pittsburgh to me, and Pittsburgh, they're in a tough spot. Like I think if they continue to win, because I think their average age is about 38 years old, right? But like, and obviously that's a little bit facetious, but the Bruins, do you guys know off the top of your head where they rank in terms of youth in the league? Like I feel like they're one of the top 10 youngest teams in the league. So it's not like we're talking on average. So it's not like we're talking about a dinosaur roster, right? Like yes, the roster's lacking in areas. We all know that, despite their 7-game win streak. We know that the roster's not optimal right now. It needs work. We know that. But the youth movement's already started. Like the rebuild, retool. Last year was a fucking terrible year. Like that was last year. They got a 5th overall pick, which turned into a 7th overall pick with the lottery, and they ended up with a guy who was for most of the year supposed to be top 3. So it's like.
So what I'm seeing is their second youngest on
according
Elite Prospects. What?
Oh, but we must be on different. I see them as 8th youngest on.
So on Elite Prospects, and I don't know how often they update it because obviously guys get hurt or guys go up and down from the AHL, whatever. But Elite Prospects has them at an average age of 27.24, which is. Anaheim's the only team that has a younger average age, but maybe that is
no. So I see that number, but that has them 8th youngest. Montreal is the youngest.
San Jose is going to be up there. Chicago, maybe.
So they're actually slightly younger than San Jose. Chicago's 3rd youngest. But yeah, so
the top 10.
At least what I'm looking.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. It wasn't filtered for some reason. It was not filtered by that, but yeah. So 8th. And then, like, the other teams that are younger are teams that have been in the, in the lottery. The Canadians who were bad for a while, the Flyers who have had some high draft picks, Blackhawks. Yeah.
Yeah, like the Bruins centennial season, and like they very much didn't want to be embarrassed in their centennial season. And that off season, like they patchwork, they moneyballed a roster to put a respectable product out there, make the play, and that's what they did. I mean, you had that, but that this isn't that situation. Like this Bruins team is younger. It's a new era. That centennial season, it was kind of like you bring in a JVR and Shattenkirk and Lucic to start, and Danton Heinen on a re-entry to Boston. Like they did all these moves to. That team probably without a number 1, number 2 center, true, after the Bergeron Krejci retirements, like that was like a situation where it's like, okay, this team's like older, they're patchworking. Like what are we doing here? Like what's the vision here? Right now, I think the vision is pretty clear for the Bruins. Like this is not. I think fans should be very happy with if this season is a fundamental rebuild, rebuilding of their structure and their systems. And by the way, they're winning at the same time, and we know the roster needs improvement. Well, guess what? It is coming, and they are a younger roster in the league. So anyway, I see that when the Bruins start winning games, you see these arguments pop up, and I don't know, just want to get you guys' thoughts on it. So, any final takeaways from the two of you?
No, I will just mention, just so people aren't expecting it, we're not going to have a Friday episode this week, but we will be back Monday after games in Ottawa and Montreal, episode number 500. Bridget says we're singing. I don't know if we've
it's a karaoke episode.
I don't know if that's actually been written into anyone's contracts. So
yeah, no. I mean that was a joke we made like 2 episodes ago. But yeah, I mean I have a wedding Friday. Scott is heading to Montreal Friday.
Big game.
So yeah, that's gonna be a fun one Saturday.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. Obviously, can't overlook Ottawa first. That's an important one too. But Saturday night in Montreal, that should be fun.
I'm having extreme FOMO because, like, sure, I want to be a maid of honor in this wedding, but I also would like to be in Montreal that day. So really didn't work out for me this time. Hopefully in the spring, but I'm sure we're gonna be getting some pictures of Scott, with his beer tower to himself this time. It's gonna take a lot for you to get through that by yourself, buddy.
I can do it.
And then
All
he's
right.
not gonna make it home for episode 500.
Yeah, I know he'll be calling in from the hotel room still with a Snickers wrapper on his cheek from not knowing what happened the night before. But all right, thank you all very much for listening, and we will talk to you next week for episode 500. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.